All right, it is time for another Hamilton real estate market update. I know this is the most riveting content on the planet, but if you are thinking about buying or selling at any point in the near future, this might be relatively useful information for you. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Steve. I'm a real estate agent in Hamilton, Ontario. So if you have any questions about the market, you can feel free to reach out to me at any point. All right, let's get right into it. So January started off fairly slow, which is pretty typical. The winter months are usually pretty slow for Canada real estate just because nobody wants to do anything because there's snow everywhere, it's freezing, and it's just generally not the best time to be moving couches back and forth. So this is pretty typical. Sales in January were down 18% year over year. Now, the number of new listings that came onto the market also were down, so there's not as many people listing their home up for sale. That was down about 19%, but the total supply of inventory is still up about 5.8%. And our months of supply is at 17%, which is at about 3 to 4 months total. Now, what does all this mean? Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Months of supply is just the amount of inventory we currently have on the marketplace. So if there's, say, 4 months of supply, that's how long it would take at the current rate that homes are selling for all of them to sell off if no new homes were listed for sale in that time. So this is a pretty solid benchmark for how the market is doing. Looking at the months of supply, if we have a really high months of supply, then that means that there's a lot of homes for sale, not too many of them are selling, and that means we're more in buyer's market territory. And on the flip side, if there's very low, if we're at like 1 or 2 months, then that means homes are selling really quickly. There's not a whole lot of inventory, which means sellers have the advantage. So where we currently are in the middle, around the 3 to 4 month range, that is a pretty balanced market, not really leaning too much one way or the other for buyers or sellers. Now, one of the biggest questions I get asked a lot from a lot of my friends who are first-time home buyers or they're trying to get into the market is, when the hell will these prices come down? Well, we do have some good news there. Prices have dropped. The median price right now is hovering around $665,000. That's across the entire real estate market. So that's detached homes, that's condos, that's townhouses, and so on. Don't know if I already said it, but that is a 6.9% drop compared to the same time last year. Condos specifically are even lower. They're hovering just below 600,000. They're at around the 590,000 price point, which means that if you're struggling to get into the market and you can't necessarily afford a townhome or a detached home, a condo could be a relatively solid option for you. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you're fully aware of any fees that you're going to be paying, how much they're going to be, and you want to budget for any potential increase in those fees because they never go down. They usually only tend to go up. So that is something to keep in mind, but that can be an option for you if you're trying to get your foot into the housing market because the condos are more affordable right now. And then the question always is after that, well, are prices going to continue to come down? And honestly, I have no idea at this point. It's hard to say for sure. One thing to note is that real estate in Hamilton is pretty cyclical. So spring market tends to be the best time of the year. That's when prices come up and that's when there's usually the most activity. If there is going to be a bump in prices, it's usually at that time. Winter tends to be pretty dead because, like I already mentioned, people don't really want to be moving in the winter. And then summer also tends to slow down a little bit. We come off of the spring market frenzy, and then people want to spend more time at the cottage. They're generally just out on vacations and then enjoying their time. And then we see a bit of an uptick again in the fall. So typically the most active times in the year for Hamilton are the spring market and the fall market, with winter being the most dead and summer being a bit of a dip. Now, that's not always the case. Last year, we actually saw more of a dip in the summer, which was interesting, and then a big plummet off a cliff in the last half of the year. So these are just generalities. It's impossible to accurately predict what is going to happen. It's a little early to tell, but it does seem like things are starting to pick up. One of our listings last week in Ancaster, we had an open house, and there was over 30 buyers that came through that, which has been almost unheard of for the last year. Like most of the open houses we've done, I don't think I've had more than maybe 6 groups come through a single open house. So to have 30 people come into one open house shows that things might be starting to pick up. I don't know, it's too early to tell. That's just what I'm seeing. Now, another key stat that we focus on when we're looking at the market is the days on market. That's just how long a home sits on the market, how long it takes to sell. Homes taking longer to sell just typically means that there's less demand. So if you see that number going up, that means that we're not seeing as much demand. There's not as many buyers out there that are buying. So we saw a bit of an increase from last year around the same time. It went from 53 to 56 days on market. So not a giant increase, but it is an increase nonetheless. And this has been the trend for the last couple of years. It's been slowly creeping up. A lot of properties are sitting and a lot of buyers are taking their time right now. Now, another interesting one to look at is the percentage of the list price received. It actually has gone down to about 96%. So that's, let's say if somebody lists their home at $1 million, they get $960,000. That's roughly what that means. Now, that number was 98% last year. So it looks like the list price compared to what the home is actually selling for is actually going down. That spread is increasing, which signals that the leverage is going more towards the buyer's favor when it comes to pricing. Now, on the flip side, if you're thinking of selling your home, it's very important that you don't overprice it, especially in this market, because that's what everybody else is doing and it's not working for them. In a market like this one where there's a lot of inventory, there's a lot of competition for the very few buyers that are out there, which situation would you prefer? Would you prefer to be just like everybody else, priced super, super high amongst all these really high listings that are all overpriced? Or would you prefer to be the one guy in the neighborhood who's actually priced reasonably well, that all the buyers who are looking are going to go there first, right? Which scenario would you prefer? Anyways, that's something to think about. Now, speaking of inventory, we currently have about 1,500 homes actively for sale on the market today, with a large chunk of those being townhouses and condos. Detached is a little bit lower, but townhouses and condos are a big chunk of that supply. Now, on the affordability side, we've already alluded to it, but the Housing Affordability Index is up 15.8%, which that sounds pretty nice. So from an affordability standpoint, it seems like things are starting to really come around for people who are struggling to buy a house in this economy, in this market. It's been insane over the last few years, and it seems like things are finally more at a reasonable level. That they might still be unreasonable for a lot of people. Some people are telling me that these prices are still out of reach, which is completely fair, but they have gotten significantly better than they were a couple of years ago. And again, like I said, they could go down even further. I have no idea. Everybody has their predictions. Everybody's saying it's going to go one way or the other. Genuinely, nobody actually knows what's going on. I don't necessarily foresee prices plummeting like crazy in the next little bit. They might continue to slowly chip away over the course of this year. They might also go up a little bit, but I don't see anything major happening one way or the other. I don't see any huge spikes or huge crashes. Usually what I recommend to people is look at the house, look at the payments that you'll have, look at the rate that you have. Does it make sense today based on your finances today? If the home doesn't make sense for you unless it significantly skyrockets in value, then you're just speculating on the market, and I don't recommend you buy something. But if it makes sense, regardless of what happens in the price, if the price dips a little bit after you buy it and that's not going to wreck you financially, then it's probably better to just go for it. Yes, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you have any questions about Hamilton real estate in general, you can always reach out to me. My contact info will be down in the description. And if you're a first-time buyer, I also have my first-time home buyer survival guide. It just walks you through the entire process start to finish so you know what to expect. That's also down in the description. So if you're interested, go check that out. Again, it's completely free. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.